The word dead and the acronym CCG are both scary. But what about the words complete and deck construction game? Yes, it's not as catchy, but most people get a kick out of completing things, and deck construction glosses over the possibility of a great big hole appearing in your wallet. So, a future in marketing it is for me. Booyah! Anyways, that is all a preamble to say that I, Ben Jai, will be having the occasional dabble on Card Game Mondays with some of my favourite discontinued card games. Not only will we be providing guides on how to get hold of physical cards or print proxies of these games, but we'll also shine the spotlight on how you might go about playing them in the comfort of your own home and over the interwebs. So, as this is my attempt at an announcement video, it will be a painfully obtuse one. I thought I'd opine and gush about some of my favourite card games that no longer receive milk from the teat of their publisher, and try and convince you why you should join me on this journey and give some or all of them a go. And well, of course, if you're already into these games, expect to be mainlining straight to your entertainment vein. We start though with an honourable mention, because A, there's been no official announcement that the game has been discontinued, and B, I just don't see an angle to provide content for this yet. This is Game of Thrones, the card game. I still remember the first time I played it, feeling genuine excitement at the push-pull-your-luck mechanic of the 3 different types of conflict, and the way you could easily overcommit your forces to one type of challenge, and then get hosed by your opponent in another. You can commit to a military challenge, trying to kill your opponent's characters, go full intrigue and discard cards from your opponent's hand, or engage in a tussle for power, trying to nick your opponent's points and give you a leg up to the win con. It's just difficult to convey how Donald Duck and awesome the challenge phase is, and that goes without mentioning the bidding for initiative and resources at the start of your turn, and all the other tidily put together dueling card game tropes. We then segue to a trio of games that I really do enjoy, but they'll be less likely to receive dedicated content. First is from the most blessed of intellectual properties, my darling Star Trek, and it's very successful in its day collectible card game. You're kinda just paying resources to stock up your ships, travel the galaxy, occasionally engage in some handbags, but most of the player interaction comes from stacking dilemmas in front of your opponent when they try and complete the planet-side or space-based missions. A card game really shouldn't have been able to pull off the essence of Star Trek the way this little fella did, but its longevity is most certainly helped by the fact that an extremely dedicated continuing committee have kept this game alive with new fan-created content. The thing is, the same company that published this game did one even better, with another hugely popular IP around the same time. But we'll get to that soon enough. We then launch way into the future with Warhammer 40k Conquest, one of the primary victims of the swift and messy divorce between Games Workshop and Fantasy Flight. But I remember this is the first game I transitioned to calling complete, and it being a positive thing, knowing that I had all the content I needed. So this was, and I Jericho you not, a straight up area control card game, with a row of planets present throughout for you to win skirmishes at, but it's only the end planet each round that gets scored. So you've got all this open information about what you're fighting for and when, but do you commit here to get resources that will help me there later on? And then how far do I push my luck with long-term planning without getting run over? Man, this is a sweet game, but it's also to me a casual one. And although I have a bunch of decks for each of the factions, I don't have any immediate ideas for content for it. Which brings us to the World of Warcraft TCG, which came out when WoW the video game had me by the short and curlies, and would not let go for a good few years. This is a game to me that was inferior mechanically to Magic the Gathering, but it did a bunch of cool things on the side to make up for that. Having cards or quests usable as resources, negating the issue of getting mana screwed made it more accessible, chief amongst them. but the game also had killer cooperative content where you would enter dungeons and raids and go up against enemies found in its parent video game. The problem this one had is that it was discontinued right into the development of its video game counterpart Hearthstone. And so although they're more like cousins than siblings gameplay wise, it still provides enough of a distraction to disincentivise me getting this to the table. Never say never though. It's time then for a card game with dice, or is it a dice game with cards? Why am I still pontificating on this matter? It's Star Wars Destiny. An absolute masterpiece of game design. Yes, it had its detractors after the initial sheen wore off, but I'm sorry, this is by a country mile the greatest marriage of the age-old enemies, cardboard rectangles and plastic cubes. For one all too brief moment in history, they lay down their swords in the creation of this epic game and said, let's make beautiful gaming babies. Winning production values, alternating micro actions, and yes, I know you could abuse action cheating, but need I point back at the sign that says innovative and enjoyable game being played here? Another one that I'm happy to say is complete for me. I still have over a dozen decks and refuse to accept this will go the way of the dodo. Thank the card gaming gods then that Destiny has its own continuing committee to carry the torch with fan-made content and support. Sweet. So, you know how I mentioned that Star Trek CCG's design and publishing company made an even better game? Well, at the turn of the century, the Lord of the Rings trading card game was born. And oh me, it was mighty, and oh my, was it innovative. But you know, I always wondered why Trek was a collectible card game and Lotra was a trading card game. Were they saying you could be persecuted for trading Trek cards? Or was it that you couldn't collect Lord of the Rings? You just had to one-use the bad boys and then bin them? One of life's biggest mysteries. I really do get emotional though about how good this game is. I mean, it would be innovative even if it was released now. Not only do you incorporate your good guys and bad boy cards in the same deck, you then try and shepherd your fellowship through 9 locations, knowing that you can spend as many resources as you want, but your opponent will then be able to spend the exact same amount to try and stop you. It's like an asymmetrical game went on a blind date with a symmetrical game, and 9 months later they created a new hybrid game-changing life form. I have folders full of this stuff and multiple decks, just no soul to play with, and that is something I can no longer abide. Let's see what we can get going online. Perchance the internet does have some uses. And then there was one, and its name is Android Netrunner. One of the most revered dueling card games of all time, and an almost perfectly asymmetrical one to boot. Seriously, you shouldn't even try to make a game that has both players play completely different roles like this. It shouldn't work. And yet, whether you're trying to score agendas as the big bad mega corporations, or trying to steal them as the titular runners, one thing is universal. You're playing a deeply strategic and immersive game. As the Corp, your main aim is to protect your servers, keeping agendas safe long enough for you to score them, and playing a game of misdirection with your opponent. And as the runner, it's all about efficiency and setting up your abilities to overcome any obstacle your opponent might throw at you. Everything has to be done with min-maxing in mind, and one misjudgment or one misreading of the situation and that's gonna hurt. You then got a cherry on top click-based action selection that's picked perfectly to enable you each to do something meaningful on your turn, without allowing for much in the way of cheesy shenanigans. Oh, and this all-time classic has a volunteer fan-led collective behind it as well, with a bunch of print and play content that we will absolutely be going down the rabbit hole with. And that was and is one absolutely mega way to end this list of complete card games. I don't really have too much of a rock solid plan in place, just to say that I've got a hankering to shine an albeit ickle spotlight on some games that continue to deserve a place in the sun. Please do let me know in the comments which, if any of these, you have even a passing interest in. Alas, I've been the voice of Benji, and this video has ended.